Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Adventures with Andy. Remember this? This is the colored sugar sprinkles that we made way back during the Halloween Megaventure when we made our own homemade Peeps for my friend Sharon. And as you can see, we haven't used these sprinkles for anything else, haven't made any more Peeps, haven't done any more baking. But you know what? This is food coloring, and that means we can use it to dye some yarn. So right here, I've got some wool to dye for zebra yarn. This is 100% non-superwash Peruvian Highland wool. And this has been soaking in water with vinegar for about 20 minutes. And I've wrung out a good portion of the water, not all of it. I still want it to have quite a bit of water in there. So I'm just going to spread this yarn out to get it to like as flat as I can. Just want to expose as many strands as I can because I don't want to have it all clumped up and this only sitting on the top. And yes, I am doing this on aluminum foil, not saran wrap. We don't have saran wrap in the house. And I don't know if we're going to use all of this. I'm going to say that right now. I'm going to do this pretty heavy. We're probably going to flip it over and do the other side, but I don't know if we'll use all of this. Yes, he's gotten kind of chunky over the past very many months. Okay, I'm guessing we're going to use all of this because it all came out in chunks. Except the bottom that doesn't want to move. Gravity does not own this sugar. I'll deal with that later. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just take these clumps and just sort of crumple them and press it in. I'm not trying to get speckles here. If I was trying to get speckles, I would not be using this sugar. I'd be making something else. I'd probably be using Kool-Aid, to be honest. I got tired of looking at this sitting on my counter, knowing we were never going to use it to cook anything else with. And I just wanted to get it off the counter and free up that counter space. All right, let's take a look at the other side. Oh, hey, we've actually got some coming through the other side. That's surprising. All right, I am going to go ahead and flip this out because we do have a lot of white spots. You should get any of that shaken up, Chad? Mm-hmm. Cool. Kiana has it. Yeah. Is it broken up? Can you take the lid off because my hand is...
There's still some that's broken, not broken up, but you have some more.
And this is the part that's got some orange in it. There wasn't as much of the orange left as the green. We need way more of the green than we needed. He's over there trying to find something that we can use to get that out with. Thank you, Chad.
You're welcome.
He crunched up more of it for me. By the way, if you have not seen the Halloween Megaventure that we did, it was a week-long video series that we did with all kinds of adventures and crafts, and we even baked a cake in honor of our favorite holiday, Halloween. So go, once you're done watching this one, check out the videos on the channel. I will add a link to the playlist at the end of this one. And go watch those Halloween Megaventures. you can see us make homemade Peeps. And you can see how easy it is. This over again. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of squinch these all together. Huh, we got some olive green. I wonder if that'll happen in the yarn anywhere. And I'm just going to, and I apologize for the noise. I'm going to use our yarn mop. Clean up some of that. This end over. And now I am just going to roll this up. This is why you keep a yarn mop on hand, people, especially if you're me. I am such a mess. I've got this rolled up. I went ahead and transferred it onto the lid of this container, and I wrapped our yarn mop around it to soak up any more dye bath liquid that comes out of it. And I'm going to go ahead and put this over the top of it to seal it, because I don't want any ants getting into this. And remember, we're using sugar sprinkles for this, and ants like sugar. Just gonna let it sit like this for a while, and then we'll be back to heat set it in the crock pot. Okay, I went ahead and let the yarn just sit out here in its aluminum foil jelly roll, I guess, overnight. Kept this lid over the top of it. No ants or anything got in it, so yay. And now I'm gonna go ahead and steam set it in the crock pot. I've got about an inch of water in here, and it is hot. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put this in here. And you can see, yep, plenty of dye came out of it and got in our yarn mop. So I will need to set that once this is done. But I'm gonna go ahead, plop the lid on the crock pot. I'm gonna let this sit here for about 20 minutes and just steam. And the reason that I'm heat setting it this way, steaming it instead of just putting the yarn in a full crock pot of water like I normally do, is because I want to give the dye a chance to set in the yarn where it is. If I were to take the yarn out of this aluminum foil, or even just put the aluminum foil in a full bath of water, a full crock pot of water, then any dye that hadn't actually set, that was still loose in the yarn, would mix in with all of that water and essentially turn that crock pot full of water into a dye bath, and it would change the result of what we get on the yarn. So we're going to try steaming it first. Remember, there's still moisture in that yarn from it being wet. That's going to create steam, which is going to create heat, which will give our dye a chance to set where it is. And then after we've done that, we can go ahead and take it out of the aluminum foil and do a regular heat setting like we normally do if we need to. All right, it's been 20 minutes. The aluminum foil jelly roll is noticeably warm. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this lid back off here. Right there. I'm gonna take this very carefully out of here and put it on here. And I don't know how well you can see in the crock pot, but we do have a lot of dye coming in here. If you look on here, you can see plenty of dye here. So we definitely have some dye that did not set, which means I'm going to go get some more water to top off our crock pot with. I'm going to put too much in there. If I put too much in there, I won't have any room for the yarn. Oh, displacement, Andy. Remember displacement. Which is still very, very warm. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the yarn mop in here. Ooh, yeah, I definitely need to take some water out of here. If I'm going to fit 2 skeins of yarn in here. And I definitely want the yarn mop in here, not only to set it, but also to grab any extra dye. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that yarn's definitely hot. Oh, yeah, I'm making such a mess. You should know me by now. You know I'll make a mess. You've met me, at least on videos. This is not going to have to come back up to temp again. And since I added a bunch of plain tap water, and I want to make sure that this is still acidic to set this yarn, I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 tablespoons, 6 half tablespoons of vinegar. And just go ahead and try to make sure that that is mixed around in here. I think because this really wasn't that set, we're not going to end up with anything on the zebra yarn dyed based on where we placed the dye. Yeah, pretty nice blue there. I should withhold judgment, shouldn't I? I should wait until this is done and see how it turns out. So, we don't know until it's done, right? Okay. Lid on and just let this set. Our dye bath is mostly exhausted. We've still got a very pale blue in here, but not a whole lot. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead, put the lid back on here, unplug the crock pot, and let this cool down. And then when it's cool, I will go ahead and rinse it and wash it. Now, we do have this with a little bit of dye in the water over here. So once we've got this gotten this cooled down and I take our main yarn, that zebra yarn, out, I may go ahead and pour the rest of this back into the crock pot with our yarn mop and then reset that to just use up that dye so that it doesn't go to waste. All right, our yarn is cool now. So at this point, I would normally just take it upstairs and rinse and wash it. But since the dye that we used was the sugar sprinkles, we got a lot of sugar in here, and especially since this one is not superwash, I'm going to do things a little bit different today. This is just a tub of plain tap water, room temperature, maybe a little bit cool. The yarn is cool though, so that shouldn't be a problem. We just don't want to risk shocking it by putting it in something that's, you know, if it's hot, put it in something cold. So, and here I've got some Dawn dishwashing liquid. And I'm just going to add some of this to the water. Don't want too many suds, I just want the dish soap in there. Get it all off my hands. And then I'm going to put the yarn in here. And I'm not going to worry too much about rinsing it too much at this point. Just squeeze out a little bit. Not too hard. Because again, this is not superwash and I don't want to risk felting it by squeezing it too hard when it's wet. Go ahead and put this one in here. And it doesn't look like we've got any bleeding, so that's good. Now I'm going to pop the lid on here. And I'm just going to let these 2 skeins sit in this for about a half an hour. I'll repeat this 3 or 4 times until I'm confident I've gotten all of that sugar out of the yarn. And here's our finished yarn. We got some really interesting different shades of green in here. We got some bright green, some paler sort of yellowish green, some almost completely white sections, even some spots that are sort of bordering on an olive green. That's really pretty cool. I kind of like how it turned out. But what's really interesting is that when we knit it into a swatch, it all just blends into one green. If you look at it really closely and really try, you can make out some of the other different shades of green, but it all just blends together nicely. But Andy, you say, what about the yarn mop? You knew I wouldn't forget that, come on. Here is our yarn mop. And this turned out very pretty. We've got bluish greens, we've got some dark, almost emerald greens. We still have some of the blue coming through, and it's a completely different variation of shades from our main skein because it had that blue to start with, and it's really pretty, except for this. This is where it had a little bit of dye that it picked up when I used it as sort of a yarn mop, started on another project and just wiped my fingers on it. And once again, there's just enough of that on here to look like it's a mistake, like it's unintentional. So I have not knitted a swatch with this. There's really not enough bare yarn left on this for this to be a yarn mop again, but I can still dye it and do some intentional color with a red like this to make it its own standalone yarn. So we will do that in another adventure. And here side by side you can see the color difference between the 2 skeins and how much difference starting with that blue made in our final color. Anyway, I hope you had fun watching me make some use of our leftover homemade sugar sprinkles in dyeing this yarn, and hopefully maybe it inspires you to do the same sometime. If you've got something that's got food coloring in it and it's past its best by date, rather than toss it out, if you've got some wool or other animal fiber yarn on hand and a little bit of vinegar, you can go ahead and use it to dye that yarn and make something pretty out of it. As always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything that we try here. And I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day today, and I will see you on our next adventure. Bye!